This is Project Arm Wrestling, the global arm wrestling podcast, brought to you by Tobias Mustonen.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to Project Arm Wrestling. Today I want to talk about something that gets thrown around all the time in the sports. The word GOAT, greatest of all time. But what does that actually mean? Is it the person with the most titles? The strongest athlete? The one who dominated a few years? Or is it something much bigger than that? Because if you ask me, being the greatest of all time isn't about being unbeatable. It's about what happens when you finally get beaten. Every athlete can look unbeatable when everything goes according to plan. When they are completely healthy, when they are winning tournaments, when the confidence is high, when the crowd is cheering. Well, that's easy. But legends aren't created during easy times. They are created during adversity. The real test begins in the moment life says no. Think about the athlete we still talk about decades later. Not because they never failed, but because failure never stopped them. They lost. They got injured. People said they were finished. A younger generation arrived and the sport evolved. Yet somehow they found another way. And that's what really fascinates me. Arm wrestling is one of the greatest and clearest examples of this. This sport changes constantly. We get new techniques, new training methods, brilliant new athletes, different body types, different strength. If you stay the same, then you disappear. And that's why I believe one of the biggest qualities of a true GOAT is adaptability. Not stubbornness, adaptability. Imagine someone who becomes world champion 20, 30 years ago. Back then, everyone pulled differently from today. The training was different, recovery was different, nutrition was different. The sport itself was completely different from today. Now imagine the same person still competing against athletes who weren't even born when these people got their first world title. And somehow they are still extremely dangerous. That isn't luck, that's evolution. A GOAT never stops learning. The moment someone thinks they have figured everything out, they start falling behind. Because sport never stands still. The mountain keeps getting higher. You either climb or slide backwards. One of my favorite things in arm wrestling is watching veterans reinvent themselves. Maybe they can't overpower people anymore, so they have to improve their hand control. Maybe they're slower, so they become smarter. Maybe their endurance isn't what it used to be, so they become more efficient. They are playing a different game than they did 20 years ago. That, my friends, is intelligence. And being great isn't about refusing to change. It's about changing without losing your identity. That's incredible. Difficult. People often think that greatness is about talent. Well, I disagree. Talent gets you noticed. Character, however, keeps you remembered. Because eventually, everyone will hit a wall. They'll start a family. They need to prioritize work. They lack motivation. They start to get pain, which leads to injuries. Every athlete reaches that point where quitting suddenly becomes responsible. And that's exactly where greatness begins. The greatest athletes aren't the one who never considered quitting. They are the one who had every reason to quit and didn't. I think that's something every arm wrestler can relate to. You spend months building your strength, then someone crushes you in 3 seconds. You train your hook, and someone tops roll you. You fix your top roll, and someone presses you. You solve that problem only to discover another, and another, and another. And that's very frustrating. But that's also why this sport is beautiful, because perfection doesn't exist. Every loss becomes information. Every defeat exposes another weakness. But the question is, what do you do with that information? Do you protect your ego, or do you improve? A GOAT shows his improvement every single time. One thing I have noticed is that the greatest athletes also remains curious. Even after decades, they still ask questions, still experimenting, still trying new ideas, still learning from younger athletes. And can you imagine that? Someone who's won everything, still willing to become a student again. That takes humility. Ego says, I already know. Greatness says, what else can I learn? That's a massive difference. I also think a GOAT changes other people. Not just the sport, the people. When they compete, everyone watches. When they speak, everyone listens. When they innovate, people copy. Suddenly, the entire sport evolves because of one person. That's influence, and that's legacy. But winning medals is of course impressive. Changing the sport, that's something else entirely. John Bersenk is probably the easiest example in arm wrestling. Not simply because of victories, but because generations have studied him. People from completely different eras have tried to understand how he thinks, how he trains, how he survives. And that's bigger than title. That's also legacy. And here's something pretty interesting as well. The longer you're at the top, the harder it becomes to stay there. Because everyone studies you. Nobody prepares for an unknown enemy. Everybody prepares for the champion. Your matches are analyzed frame by frame. Your strength becomes public knowledge. Your weaknesses becomes targets. People dedicate years of trying to beat you specifically. Imagine carrying that pressure for decades and still finding ways to win. That's unbelievable. So maybe the greatest isn't about reaching the top. Maybe it's about just surviving there. The summit is crowded. Staying there is lonely. I think every athlete should ask themselves one question. If everyone knew exactly how I pull, could I still win? Because eventually they will win. The surprise disappears, and only your ability to evolve remains. And that's why I think a GOAT is someone who dominates one era. A true GOAT survives multiple eras. Every opponent, every rules, different techniques, different generation, different versions of the sport. Because the game changes, and the GOAT have to change with it. Maybe that's the real definition, eh? A GOAT isn't someone who refuses to lose. A GOAT is someone who refuses to stop growing. So the next time you lose a match, and trust me you will, don't ask, why did I lose? Instead ask, what is this loss trying to teach me? Because that's the mindset that keeps champions alive. And maybe that's what makes a GOAT. Not perfection, not titles, not talents, but relentless evolution. The willingness to suffer, to adapt, to stay curious, and to keep fighting. Long after everyone else believes your story is already finished. Thank you for listening to The Project, and I'll see you in the next episode.
You've been listening to Project Arm Wrestling. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the podcast, share it with your friends, and be part of the project.